Okay, we're going to get started now. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kelly Anderson. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at Metrolinx. It's my pleasure to be the moderator for this evening's event. I'd like to welcome all of you to our virtual open house to discuss the proposed Dundas Bus Rapid Transit project. This round of engagement is focused on the Mississauga West segment of the project between Confederation Parkway to 9th Line. And this live session is part of the fourth round of public engagement for the project. Next slide, please. So just reviewing the agenda, we're going to go over some technical housekeeping in the next slide, followed by our land acknowledgement. And then I'm going to introduce our panel for the evening, and we'll get into the presentation, and we'll have lots of time at the end for questions and answers, and I'll explain how that's going to work shortly. Next slide, please. So just wanted to start off by covering off some of our technical housekeeping. If you experience any audio problems using your computer, you can use your phone as well. Simply dial 437-703-4197 and enter the conference ID and passcode on the screen. I wanted to let you know as well, we'll be recording this session. If you experience any technical issues, the recording will be posted online in the upcoming days if you have trouble participating. I also wanted to let you know that this event is being closed captioned, so feel free to use that feature by enabling it on your video player if needed. And you'll see in the chat, we have posted a link to a platform called Slido, where you can type in your questions this evening. At the end of the presentation, we'll be taking questions. Anything that we can't answer today, we will post on our website with responses in the following days as well. As great minds think alike, we often see repetition in some of the questions, so we won't read the same question over and over, but if you do see a question that's already there in the Slido link that covers off your area of interest, you can vote for that question, and we'll get to the ones that are most upvoted first. And you can also use this QR code to submit your questions. We'll go back to that at the end, so no worries about getting it now. Okay, I'm going to read the land acknowledgement now. Let us take a moment to acknowledge we are on lands that have been and continue to be home to many Indigenous peoples, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat peoples. We are all treaty people. Many of us have come here as settlers, as immigrants, or involuntarily as part of the transatlantic slave trade in this generation or generations past. We acknowledge the historic and continued impacts of colonization and the need to work towards meaningful reconciliation with the original caretakers of this land. We acknowledge that Metrolinx operates on territories and lands covered by many treaties that affirm and value the rights of Indigenous communities, nations, and peoples. We understand the importance of working towards reconciliation with the original caretakers of this land. At Metrolinx, we will conduct business in a manner that is built on a foundation of trust, respect, and collaboration. I'm now going to introduce our panelists for this evening. Tina Detramani, she's the Senior Manager of Rapid Transit, their sponsor. Tina's going to come on and wave hello. Thanks, Tina. Denny Yip. Kevin Phillip. She's the Senior Manager of Rapid Transit. Andrew Barr. Sadia Matuza. And Joanne Wang. I'm now going to turn it over to Tina to take us through the project overview.
Thank you, Kelly. So the Dundas BRT is a planning study along Dundas Street for a bus rapid transit route. The study limits are from the western part of Toronto right into Hamilton, or about 48 kilometers in length. The project is a recommendation of the Metrolinx Regional Transportation Plan, and it's divided into 4 segments, as you'll see on the bottom left of the screen. Today we're here about Mississauga West, as Kelly mentioned. But just for reference, the Mississauga East section is funded through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Plan and is being delivered by the City of Mississauga. So if there's any questions on that section, I believe we have Mississauga staff on the line to help answer those. And just for clarity, there's currently no funding allocated to implement the balance of the corridor. I'll pass it on to Denny for some more background.
Thank you so much, Tina, and good evening, everyone. So just an overview of the project. The project timeline is shown here. We're currently sitting in the preliminary design, environmental impact assessment stage, and the preliminary design business case. Most of the focus, as Tina had mentioned previously, was on the Mississauga East segment to advance planning there, and that project is now with the City of Mississauga to deliver. A brief history lesson. The Dundas BRT project started in 2020 with preliminary environmental studies. These studies continued into 2021 and 2022, where the team conducted the Transit and Rail Project Assessment Process, the TRPAP, also formerly known as the Transit Project Assessment Process, or TPAP, consultation for the Mississauga East segment, and 3 rounds of public engagement. In late 2022, the project team began Stage 1 archaeological assessment reporting and are now in the process of conducting environmental impact assessments for both the Mississauga West and Toronto segments of the project. And of course, we're here tonight at Public Engagement Round 4. In addition, preliminary design and preliminary design business case work is ongoing for Halton and Hamilton, Mississauga West, and Toronto segments. And lastly, later this year and into the future after the preliminary and design business case, we will kick off the TRPAP for Mississauga West, including a 5th round of public engagement. What we've heard in the past is important for us to understand how we can make Dundas BRT help your community. The main points we heard were connectivity to surrounding transit, infrastructure and services, as well as priority on active transportation like cycling or walking. You also told us that you'd like to hear more about project impacts like community and property impacts and potential environmental impacts. So, why are we here today? In general, we're here today to share with you and gather input on the following: environmental studies to be completed within the Mississauga West segment, the generally proposed design for the Mississauga West segment, the BRT stop locations and amenities, and lastly, next steps for both the project and the Mississauga West segment. As you can see on the right, we've provided a QR code to our website. Please feel free to leave comments, questions, and concerns directly onto our website, and we'll respond to your feedback accordingly. In addition to the general public, Metrolinx has been working closely with what we call technical advisory committees and stakeholder advisory groups. They've both been critical in providing feedback on how we can improve the project and inform key decisions, provide advice on the project, and offer an alternative perspective. The TAC is made up from members from municipalities, transit partners, major corporations, and other large organizations that own and operate infrastructure in the area. This helps us manage the potential impacts of this project on things like property, utilities, and other transit services. Meanwhile, the SAG is made up from members of local community experts, advocates, and community members, and have been helpful in vocalizing what they would like to see. This helps us manage the potential impacts of this project on the local community and make sure their feedback is heard. So, how's the study structured? Well, the project is broken into 3 distinct elements. We have the Transit and Rail Project Assessment Process, which evaluates the impacts of the project on the surrounding environment. Furthermore, this is based on the preliminary design, which further develops what we're here to share with you today into a workable and realistic plan. This includes putting together a list of alternatives, evaluating and identifying the alternatives, progressing the design of concept stops, and identifying where the stops should be located. In addition, the preliminary design business case is based on the costs coming out from preliminary design and helps us understand whether this project will ultimately be beneficial to the public. The business case is broken down into 4 strategic cases: the strategic case, the economic case, the financial case, and the deliverability and operations case. The TRPAP is made up of 2 distinct parts: the pre-planning activities, as you'll see on the left, and the TRPAP itself, as you can see on the right. Currently, we're focusing on the pre-planning activities, with our efforts being put towards the preparation of draft environmental reporting. The preliminary design would feed into this activity, and we want to keep you involved by keeping you informed on the project, building further understanding on what we're planning, and providing opportunities for your input. Feedback received during this round of engagement will inform preliminary design. The environmental studies that feed into the pre-planning activities include the following: natural environment, socioeconomic and land use characteristics, archaeology, cultural heritage, climate change and sustainability, traffic and transportation, noise and vibration, and air quality. You can find the existing condition studies on the Dundas BRT page of the Metrolinx website. We're about to get into the alternatives for the Mississauga West segment, but before we do, here's a quick overview of how we've evaluated them. We took a mini business case approach and broke it down into the same 4 categories as previously mentioned. This criteria incorporates the evaluation feedback received in previous open houses. So firstly, we have the strategic case, which answers how does the investment achieve strategic goals and objectives. We also have the economic case, which evaluates the investment's overall value to society. Following that, we have the financial case, which includes the financial implications of delivering the investment. And lastly, we have the deliverability and operations case, which really focuses on the risks and requirements that have to be considered in delivering and operating the investment. As previously mentioned, Mississauga West is today's focus, and we've broken it down into 3 subsegments to focus in on. As you can see on the map, the 3 sections are from Confederation Parkway to the Credit Woodlands, the Credit Woodlands to Mississauga Road, and Mississauga Road to 9th Line. For each section, we've considered 2 of the 3 road section alternatives, as you'll see in the next slide. So just a brief overview of the 3 alternatives considered. The first one is a curbside reserved bus lane, which includes ample space for public realms, including cycle tracks and wide sidewalks, a bus lane adjacent to the cycle track, and 2 travel lanes for general purpose traffic. The second alternative is the full median BRT, which moves those bus lanes into the middle of the road, separated by an island, and maintains the 2 general purpose traffic lanes. And lastly, we have a reversible BRT lane, which includes a single lane in the middle for bus traffic. We'll dive into further detail into each one in the following slides. So starting with the curbside reserved bus lane example, benefits include a lower general capital cost, a full amenity boulevard, which includes sidewalks and dedicated physically protected cycling facilities, and that overall full multimodal cross section, including spaces for buses, auto traffic, pedestrians, and cyclists. Drawbacks include the fact that dedicated physically separated BRT facilities are not provided, requiring vehicles to turn right from the BRT lane, a lack of continuity of the median BRT lane from the approved Mississauga East segment, potential increased impacts to natural features, conflicts between bus passengers and cyclists at curbside bus stops, as well as the potential for commercial, residential, and heritage resource property displacements. An example you can find of a curbside reserved bus lane in the Greater Toronto area are the bus lanes implemented along Kingston Road, Morningside Avenue, and along Kennedy and Midland roads in Toronto. The second alternative is a full median BRT, which carries many of the benefits as seen in the previous example. However, a main benefit of full median BRT is the continuity of median BRT from the Mississauga East segment, as well as improved transit service reliability with less potential for service interruptions or delays. However, drawbacks include a general higher capital cost to implement, as well as the potential for property impacts. An example of median BRT in the Greater Toronto area is the Viva network along Highway 7 and along Yonge Street and Davis Drive. Lastly, we have the reversible BRT lane. The main benefit here is that it is a much lower capital cost compared to the 2 previously mentioned examples, as well as less property impacts and building displacements and minor impacts to natural features. However, the drawbacks are similar to the curbside example, where there is a lack of continuity of the full BRT lane, reduced transit service reliability due to the non-peak direction operating in mixed traffic, as well as the potential for residential and built heritage resource displacements. An example in the Greater Toronto area of a reversible BRT lane includes Viva on Highway 7 as it passes under Highway 404. So between Mississauga Road and 9th Line, we believe that the best alternative is the curbside reserved bus lane for a variety of reasons. This really includes benefits to transit travel time savings, transit flexibility, and routing flexibility, as many of the bus routes today turn on and off Dundas. In addition, there wouldn't be a need to fully reconstruct the road, and that reduces construction costs and impacts and reduces operating and maintenance costs. For example, under the deliverability and operations case, the roadway is already quite wide and it would be much easier to convert the outside lane to bus lanes rather than reconstructing the middle. Lastly, for general purpose traffic, this option best manages traffic operations, intersection levels of service, and auto travel times. Between Confederation Parkway to the Credit Woodlands, we believe that the best alternative is the median reserved bus lane. These include benefits to transit travel time savings compared to the auto, increased transit reliability from being separated from general purpose vehicles, as well as providing us with options to manage the capital, property, and operating and maintenance costs, and better integrate with the Mississauga East segment. In addition, there would be impacts to general purpose traffic. However, the ultimate design would need to adopt changes that best manages these impacts to traffic operations, including intersection levels of service and auto travel times. You'll notice we haven't yet discussed the Credit Woodlands to Mississauga Road, and that's because we consider it to be a special pinch point. It's an area where road widening is constrained by the existing environment or where other design challenges are present. The Erindale Valley pinch point is one example of this that we'll focus on, as there are several heritage, environmental, and cultural sites, along with managing transit routing to and from the University of Toronto Mississauga and managing traffic impacts. Due to the unique characteristics of this area, there are multiple things to consider. These include the property acquisition required beyond the official plan right-of-way to accommodate all contemplated infrastructure needs, which includes the dedicated BRT guideway, 4 general purpose lanes, cycle tracks, sidewalks, and amenity/utility space. There are numerous buildings located close to the property/the right-of-way lines as well, a significant amount of natural heritage features, as well as numerous cultural heritage resources and landscapes. In addition, during previous engagement, the public identified that there were some opportunities and concerns, including consideration for the Dundas Connects Master Plan, concerns for cycling infrastructure and safety, and environmental considerations. The best performing alternatives identified for review through this section include a reversible BRT lane and median BRT lanes. With all of these factors in mind, we believe the best alternative is the full median BRT with a slight road shift towards the north, as this helps manage impacts to the existing corridor, along with providing the transit benefits that we're looking for. This includes managing transit travel times and reliability, mitigating cost issues, and managing traffic operations at the Mississauga Road intersection. Special consideration was given to the Erindale Valley crossing, as it is an old structure and is due for replacement. The median lanes scored better here, as transit priority in both directions would grant much more consistent transit travel times. Moving on to the BRT stops, we've identified 7 locations in this overall segment that are the best stop locations. It's important to note that these stops would primarily be served by express services, and local services would still coexist to serve minor stops. We've based these stop locations on things like access versus travel time, current transit facilities, connections to other bus routes, distance between stops, and access to major trip generators. This is a rendering of how these BRT stops would look. You can expect to see next bus information, service maps, bench seating, weather protection, tactile warning strips, garbage and recycling bins, access ramps, and wayfinding. In addition, not shown are Presto devices, as well as arts and cultural heritage elements to make the stop reflect the character of the area. What amenities are available at each of these stops will also change to reflect ridership or existing infrastructure in the area. So lastly, just to provide an update on all of the remaining segments. For Toronto, Mississauga West, and Halton Hamilton, we're working to prepare the preliminary design for the best performing alternatives. In addition, we continue to progress the environmental reporting to get the transit and rail project assessment process complete, as well as the preliminary design business case, which provides direction on and inform governmental decision-making and future funding. And now I'll hand it back over to Kelly to facilitate the question and answer period.
Thank you so much, Denny. So we're going to get into the questions and answer period of the presentation now. As I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we are using Slido as the platform to address your questions. So there's a link in the chat, and there's also a QR code. It's the QR code that's on the right of this slide. The QR code that's on the left takes you to the project page if you'd like that as well. So we'll start to answer some of the questions that have come in already. And like I said, if you have additional questions that come to mind, please submit them using the Slido link. So the first question we have, let me just pull it up now, is around bike routes. So what are plans for bike routes in the area? And a comment that currently Dundas Street is not the safest place to ride a bike. Andrew, I think you're going to take this question.
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, so as Denny sort of illustrated earlier in the presentation, for all three alternatives that we looked at, we're proposing dedicated physically separated cycling facilities within the boulevard space. You know, this is a higher order transit infrastructure project, but we do want to try to provide a fully balanced corridor that's good for all users, and cycle tracks that will attract cyclists is a big part of that. So for those are not familiar, a cycle track is raised off of the road, and it would be protected from the curb lane, the nearest lane to the boulevard, through a raised curb. And we expect to have these cycling facilities throughout the Mississauga West segment. There are some areas where there's constraints due to property or other elements where there may be a need to reduce the cycle track to a multi-use path or trail, but we're looking to try to provide as much continuity of those cycling facilities throughout the entire corridor as we did through the Mississauga East segment.
Thank you, Andrew. The next question is, considering the cost of a full BRT, would it not be a better option to enhance the bus system currently operating on Dundas Street? And I'm going to turn it over to Denny to answer that one.
Thanks, Kelly. And that's a great question. I think it's a challenge to manage this kind of project, and increasing bus service does have its limitations in that ultimately, as you get more and more service on the roads, there's also the potential for service reliability to decrease. And so as a result, as detailed in the Dundas Connect study and the Dundas BRT initial business case, bus rapid transit system is generally required in order to maintain service reliability at a high frequency. And that overall results in better service to everybody along the corridor. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks. Thank you. I have another one for you, Denny. Do we know what the projected ridership is for this route?
So at this moment, we're working through an indicative service plan for the Dundas BRT, which includes connections along Dundas and off corridor as well. We're working together to understand what the ridership implications of that service plan will be. But for now, I would refer whoever asked this question to the initial business case at the moment. There are some ridership projections in there that well validate the need for bus rapid transit.
Thank you. Just give me one moment while we get the next question ready. Okay, here's the next one. We have a cycle track. Why have a cycle track when there are not many cyclists on this route currently? Will adding bike lanes further reduce the road width? Andrew, are you able to take this one?
Sure, yeah, I can take that one as well. So what we've seen through previous studies is that cycling numbers are rising as people try to switch to more sustainable modes of transit. And we want to take advantage of that. You know, going back to the earlier question about Dundas not being a safe place for cyclists to cycle, this will now provide them with that safe space that will potentially, hopefully, attract more cyclists to cycle within the corridor.
Okay, thank you for that. Next question. Will GO Transit be operating this BRT once completed? It makes sense since they're an intercity bus agency. Also, will this be connected to the proposed Hamilton LRT? It would be such a beautiful and seamless connection. Denny, can you take that one?
Yeah, and thank you to whoever asked this question for supporting the project. We'd love to see that kind of connection as well from a regional transportation perspective. I'll say at this moment, we haven't decided on an exact operator for the indicative service plan. However, the preliminary design business case, which will come out as this project towards the end of this year, will detail kind of things in terms of operational requirements and who would be best or would be in the best position to operate those services. And we'll be looking forward to working with our municipal service partner agencies to detail that out. In terms of potentially connecting to the Hamilton LRT, we are looking as a regional operator to try to connect as many important nodes as possible. So places like GO stations and other connections to major rapid transit routes are always under consideration.
Thank you. Next question. How will residents access or leave their properties with a center bus median in the road? Currently, the center lane allows residents to enter and exit the property with the high volume of traffic on Dundas. Andrew?
Sure, yeah, I'll take that one. So that's a great question. Currently, you know, there's no obstructions for most residents or business owners or patrons to make a left turn out of an entrance and continue in whatever direction they're traveling. However, with the median BRT guideway, there will be access restrictions such as raised medians. And so that is going to prohibit vehicles from turning left out of entrances. So to account for that, residents will and patrons or business owners will have to make right turns in and out of entrances. And so, you know, people that are, say, traveling east and want to travel west, they'll have to migrate to the nearest signalized intersection and make a left turn or a U-turn. And so to account for an increase in those left turn or U-turn volumes, there will be increased signal phases, length of phases, to account for that and reduce the queuing of left turn and U-turn vehicles. Hopefully that answers it.
Thank you very much. Next question. What steps are being taken to ensure that this project stays within budget and is delivered on time? Who's best to answer that one? Tina, are you able to take that one?
Sorry, give me a minute. There we go.
Sure.
Yeah, I can try to take that one. Thank you for the question. So, you know, we're working on this project, and just to clarify, the scope of this project right now is just the planning studies work. Only the Mississauga East section is being constructed at this time. And so I will defer to Denny to speak in detail about the actual timeline, but there are sort of the milestones that we're meeting, and we're currently on schedule as of now. So we do expect to complete on time. And sorry, I've lost the question. What was the other part of this?
What steps are being taken to ensure that it stays within budget and is delivered on time? So budget was
Yeah,
the first
so
part.
yeah, so the budget piece, I mean, we're currently within budget. I don't anticipate any issues there. So I mean, I don't think there's any challenges that we can speak to at this time with respect to the completion on budget on time. But just to clarify, the scope is just the planning studies, not the actual construction piece at this time.
Right. Thank you for clarifying that. Thanks, Tina. The next question is, will this project include pedestrian and cyclist infrastructure on the Dundas Bridge over the 403? Currently, that bridge has no such infrastructure, so the only safe options to cross it are Oakville Transit or driving. Andrew, are you able to take that?
Sure, yep, I can take that as well. So the plan for the Highway 403 underpass is to introduce 4-meter multi-use paths, one on the north side of the bridge, one on the south side of the bridge. Unfortunately, we cannot provide dedicated facilities, and the reason being is that existing structure, given its type of structure, cannot be adequately widened to be able to accommodate those dedicated facilities. However, a 4-meter multi-use path will provide ample room for both cyclists and pedestrians heading eastbound or westbound.
Thank you. The next question is for Denny. Will there be My Way bus service on Dundas? Will there be a stop at Dundas and Robinson?
Yep, so there's an existing My Way bus stop at Dundas and Robinson. As part of our work, we'll be looking to maintain the majority of the existing curbside bus stops. And it's similar to how service operates today, with My Way 101 operating more of an express type service and My Way Route 1 operating more of a local type of service. We'll be looking to maintain a similar strategy with the Dundas BRT, in that an express service would operate primarily within the BRT lanes, and then a local service would continue to operate along the curbside.
Thank you for that. The next question, does the current curbside design being proposed have any impacts to the Arundel Church? Andrew, can you take that one?
Sure, yeah. So I just through the Arundel Valley, where the Arundel Valley Church is located, we're proposing a medium BRT. However, with that being said, the proposed design at this point is to shift the alignment of Dundas Street to the north to avoid impacts to several heritage resources on the south side of the corridor. And as such, at this point, we're able to avoid any impacts to those heritage resources, as including the Arundel Church.
Great, thank you. The next one is a comment and a question. So I fully support this project. What is the timeline for procurement? Tina, could you take that one?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. So thank you for the question, and thank you for the support as well of the project. So as noted earlier, this project isn't currently funded for implementation. So there really isn't a firm timeline that we can offer. We did have to make some assumptions, though, in our planning processes, but those dates are definitely subject to change. So when we complete the preliminary design business case and the preliminary sort of work, that will be submitted to the province, and then there will be a decision made regarding funding at that time. So short answer is there's no current timeline.
Thank you. The next question is, will the alternatives to widening, are there alternatives to widening of Dundas? Maybe I'm reading that wrong. Andrew, I'm hoping you can take that one.
Sure. Yeah, I think the question is, yeah, will alternatives require widening of Dundas? That's a tough question to answer. If for the most part, or I would say for the most part, the corridor is ample for the corridor, but there are areas where we do need to widen. But we're looking to only widen to stay within the city's official plan right of way. Depending on where you are, it varies from about 35 meters to 42 meters. So, but there is, short answer to the question, there is widening required, and that's why we're looking at the potential impacts of that.
Thank you. The next one is, because of construction, how much additional greenhouse gas would be generated due to traffic congestion? Joanne, are you able to help us with that question?
Yeah, I can give an like a high level response to that question. So as part of the study, we have prepared a air quality and impact assessment report, as well as climate change sensibility, as mentioned earlier by Danny in the presentation. The timeline for this report, they should be available for public review sometime in 2025. And the question regarding to greenhouse gas emission should be we have identified in those reports at the time being, they're still being prepared and reviewed, and I'm hoping that you'll find a response in the report when they're available for public review in 2025.
Thank you for that, Joanne. Just bear with us one moment while we get the next question up. The next question is, how will bus times improve? Danny, can you help with that one?
In principle, I'll refer back to the initial business cases. There are quite a bit of travel time savings to be had. However, understand that we're working out to a future horizon year where ultimately traffic impacts are anticipated to increase and transit travel times as a result would increase as well. However, the intent of a bus rapid transit network and the infrastructure related to it is really to maintain general service reliability. So you can anticipate to see transit travel times that are less than that today, where buses operate in mixed traffic. I wish I had an exact number to give you, but you'll have to refer back to the initial business case for that one.
The next question is, when will the environmental studies for Toronto be available? Joanne, is that one you can help with?
I believe at the moment, all the environmental work is kind of on pause. For now, so the timeline for the environmental studies for the Toronto segment, it's unknown at the moment.
Thank you. The next question is about connections. So despite the fact that we're not discussing Mississauga East this evening, the question is about whether the BRT would connect with the Hazel McCallion LRT. Sadia, is that one you can take?
Yes, I can absolutely take that question. Yes, there will be a connection with the Hazel McCallion LRT at Hurontario and Cooksville and Dundas Street. So yes, both transit systems will connect there.
Thank you, Sadia. Get the next question ready. The next question is, would it make more sense to have the same type of BRT laneways across the entire route rather than switching between sections? If Andrew's able to take this one.
Sure, yeah, I can take that one. That's a good question. So we looked at several transit infrastructure types through the entire corridor from Toronto through to Hamilton. As you might understand, it probably doesn't make sense to provide the same type of infrastructure all the way to Hamilton because the ridership numbers are just not going to be there for those less populated areas. So we carried out a traffic operations assessment or analysis that looked at what the impacts of the BRT service would have on local transit as well as general purpose traffic, and we tried to best fit the BRT infrastructure with the existing transit and the general purpose traffic. In addition to that, through the work that was done through Dundas Connects, it was determined that based on the ridership levels, that and it's sort of logical, as you move from west to east, the ridership numbers will increase. So if you look at the various segments from Toronto through to Mississauga East to Mississauga West through to Halton and Hamilton, you'll see as we head towards the west, there's a reduction in the transit priority measures that we're proposing. So it's based on ridership and you know who's there to take the bus, and does it warrant the infrastructure that we're proposing.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is a combination of comment and question. So we needed this BRT 10 years ago, and as such, the urgency is high. Are there any plans to rapidly implement basic improvements while design and procurement and construction proceed slowly? For example, by building a multi-use trail on both sides of the road and creating bus painted lanes where possible for 2025. Denny, is that something you can take?
Yep, I can answer this question. Thank you for your support of the project. I'll say at this moment, because this project is still in a planning stage and hasn't officially been endorsed by government for funding to take through procurement, we don't have detailed construction plans to answer that kind of question right now. However, I think we can all, as an agency, look back to the example that Toronto took over the past couple of years early into the pandemic, when they had easily and quickly implemented things like bus rapid transit lanes for rapid TOs, and I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to do something similar. So in advance of, say, this project going into construction or anything like that, there are always going to be alternative measures that we could as an agency push forward and work with our municipal partners to take forward.
Thanks, Denny. Okay, the next question is, all of this seems good for getting people west to east and vice versa, but why not just go all the way and make it an LRT like the other project? Denny, can you help with that one?
Yeah, so as previously mentioned, the Dundas Connects Master Plan and the initial business case all reviewed LRT and BRT as well as different options to best support the Dundas corridor, and BRT came out as the clear winner in both of those reports. Going back to kind of the previous question on the potential transit travel time savings, I'm looking at the initial business case, and it could reduce transit commute times by up to 14 minutes, which helps generally support productivity across the corridor and the region. However, I'll also add that as part of our BRT infrastructure design, there's nothing that necessarily precludes future conversion of the BRT infrastructure to support LRT in the future.
Thank you. Okay, the next question. Can we have an approximate time of the TRPAP completion for Mississauga West and Toronto? Would that be, who would take that one? I think, Denny, you covered it in one of your slides. Can you repeat that? Or whoever can help.
Sure, I can take that. Yeah. So
okay, thanks, Andrew.
We're looking to commence the TPAP or TRPAP process early in the new year. And so we'd be expecting to complete the TRPAP in the second or third quarter of next year. And I'm speaking for Mississauga West. Toronto's a little further behind, and we'll provide updates on that as they come available.
Thank you. The project map showed a UTM, or University of Toronto Mississauga, stop in the valley section. Will there be access improvements between Dundas Street and UTM? Andrew, can you help with that one?
Sure, yeah. So the BRT service plan proposes that there will be a connection to the UTM. It would be a large trip generator. So to support that, there will be we call it a reserve bus lane. So it's similar to an HOV lane, but only for buses that would travel to UTM off of the Dundas corridor.
Thank you. We'll get the next question ready. Just bear with us. I think we might be coming to the end of the questions that have been submitted. So if anyone has any other questions that you want to submit via Slido, please do so now, and we'll take a few more. In the meantime, we have one more that is how will we connect to Go and MyWay hubs? Jenny, can you take that one?
Yep. So as part of our indicative service planning work, we're looking to maintain a lot of the existing connections that exist along the Toronto, MyWay, Oakville Transit, Burlington, and HSR hubs. So that includes major hubs like Waterdown Gateway being planned in Waterdown, Kipling GO Station, and potentially connections to other GO stations such as Dixie GO Station, Cooksville GO Station, Oakville GO, Burlington GO, and many other park and ride hubs along Dundas Street, as well as Trafalgar as well.
Thank you. Could we talk about how buses will transition between curbside and median lanes and to and from University of Toronto Mississauga campus at the Mississauga Road Dundas West intersection? Andrew, please.
Sure.
Thanks.
Sure, I can take that. Yeah, so we're just working through the Mississauga Road intersection is a tricky one. So we're working through that right now through the development of the 10% preliminary design. But what we'd be looking to do is for westbound BRT vehicles that are east of the intersection, we'd be looking to have them transition out to be able to head north on Mississauga Road. Now and then for those buses as well, they can continue through the intersection and then transition to the curbside RBL lanes heading west of the intersection. And then for eastbound vehicles, we'd be transitioning those vehicles from the RBL into the medium BRT lane west of the intersection. And we're also looking at adding a dedicated left turn for BRT vehicles to head north on Mississauga Road. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks for that. Don't go too far, Andrew. I have another one for you.
Yep.
Will there still be a left turn lane on westbound Dundas at Robinson and a light there?
That's a good question. I believe so. I think we're maintaining that intersection, but I may have to take that away.
Sure. That's no problem. We can, I mentioned at the beginning, and if anybody missed it at the beginning, we will be posting responses to all the questions asked online in the coming days. So if that's one we can look into, we can always post our answer later.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, can we please provide an update to the Mississauga East portion? What is the status? Tina, is that something you can take? Or Jerry?
I think it would be best suited for Jerry if he's able to come on. I'm not sure, but if not, we can always take the information of the person who asked the question and get back to them.
Okay, thanks. I think we've come to the end of our questions. I'll just give everybody a couple of moments if you think of anything else that you want to submit to us. And otherwise, we'll wrap up shortly. So we'll just give you a moment or two. Okay, we're not seeing any other questions come in, so we can wrap up. I just want to thank all of you for taking the time to join us tonight. Any of the questions that we couldn't address that we need to look into, or if you think of something, after the session tonight that you didn't think about during, you want to submit them later, please feel free. You can submit them via our online contact form, or you can contact us anytime at peel@metrolinx.com, and we'll get back to you and address them as soon as possible. We also encourage you to check the website frequently for project updates and future opportunities, including the next round of engagement, which will be round 5, and further engage with this team. As I mentioned earlier, we will be posting a recording of this virtual open house in the coming days, so you can have a look at that as well if you would like. So we just want to thank you again and hope everybody has a great night, and just thanks for your interest and your time tonight. Have a good night.